Welcome to the Solo Edit Podcast, a podcast for estheticians looking for a weekly dose of motivation, inspiration, and honest conversations about life in and out of the treatment room. Welcome back. I have been on a little bit of a hiatus, if you haven't noticed. I just needed some time to not feel the pressure of having to perform or record a podcast. I always want to make sure that I'm showing up authentically. And I've had a little bit of time to reflect. And you guys, I've been really burnt out. And I haven't really wanted to admit that because I don't ever want people to think that I don't love what I do, because I absolutely love what I do. But I definitely have been struggling for maybe, 6 months now. Just feeling like the work that I do matters and feeling like I'm showing up in the best way, both at work and at home, and just really honestly not feeling like myself. This podcast is going to be dedicated to some of my revelations, a little bit about where I'm finding myself in terms of work and health. And I never want this podcast to be about me, but I would say most of you guys are solo estheticians and many of you are moms. And so I think that this can be really relevant. As I said, I just have not been feeling right. And actually, it's been a long time that I just haven't felt like myself, and I haven't been feeling like, I don't know what the word is. I just have been feeling like there's more to life, and the stress that I'm feeling or the things that I'm going through shouldn't be impacting me the way that they are. And so, I've been on this weight loss journey for a couple of years. For those who don't know, I've talked a little bit about it in my Facebook group, but I had a really difficult pregnancy. My son is now 7. I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and then towards the end, I had preeclampsia, which I kept going back to the doctor's office towards the end of the pregnancy saying that I didn't feel right. I had gained over 100 pounds. I was seeing stars, and I was told, this is normal. You're really pregnant. It's, part of the gestational diabetes. Stop eating so much. You are, now well over where you should have been, because 100-pound weight gain is crazy when you're pregnant. And I kept saying, I'm not eating for 2. I'm not doing anything crazy. I don't know what is happening. Long story short, right after my baby shower, I went to the hospital because I was having some cramping, and they immediately were like, okay, you cannot leave. You have severe preeclampsia. You are going to be induced. We cannot induce you for a couple days because we have to give you steroid shots to help your son's lungs fully develop. I think I was in the hospital for 7 or 8 days. The whole induction process took about 3 days because of my blood pressure having to be on magnesium and then being taken off magnesium so I could be on Pitocin, back and forth. You guys, it was insane. And also, to be honest with you, really traumatizing. The more that I share my story just about how the healthcare system kind of failed me, the more I hear other women talk about similar situations or similar birthing stories. And so I know that I am not alone and we need to do better. But after I had my son, I had a lot of anxiety because I was very convinced throughout this whole situation that I was going to die and leave him motherless. And so I had a lot of anxiety for a long time. I struggled with postpartum depression. And then finally, my doctor put me on Wellbutrin. And I am all for figuring out, if you are depressed or anxious, if you need medication, I really am all for that. And I was on medication, Wellbutrin specifically, for several years. And I still had a lot of anxiety, but I also had these really bizarre OCD symptoms that would mostly manifest at night. And I would be really anxious and I would fly off the handle really easily. Can't believe I'm sharing this, but to the point where I felt like, okay, this is my new normal. Maybe I'm just going crazy. Maybe having a baby changed the chemistry in my brain and I'm just like a lunatic now. I'm not getting enough sleep, yada, yada. This went on until this past spring of feeling this way. OCD, anxious, flying off the handle really easily. And I finally went to a psychiatrist and was just like, this is not working. This life that I'm having is not working out for me. I'm feeling like a bad mom constantly. I cannot control my emotions. My OCD is really manifesting in weird ways, and I don't know what to do. And so the psychiatrist, after talking with her, literally one session was like, Wellbutrin is not the medication for you. You have ADHD. It's a stimulant. Like, let's get you off of that ASAP. No bashing Wellbutrin, because if that works for you, that's fine. But I promise you that as soon as I stopped taking Wellbutrin, all of my OCD tendencies went away. Every single one of them. I have no obsessive compulsive thoughts anymore. I am patient. I'm back to the old Sarah. I have not lost my temper like I did before. And then also my anxiety is probably 80, 90% better. And so I'm sharing that because I think that in general, doctors can do a lot better. And also I think that if you are wanting to get medication for any sort of depression or anxiety, it's probably in our best interest to see a psychiatrist and not your general practitioner. Knowing that now, I am regretful because I do feel like I wasted some of the most precious years of my son's life being this person that I absolutely am not. And now I feel like I'm kind of trying to rebuild. I want to say rebuild my relationship with my son, but my husband says, like, Sarah, you are so hard on yourself. Like, you are such a good mom. You're always there for him. And like, your idea or your perception of what actually transpired is not actual like reality. Like, you're just way too hard on yourself, which is very true. But I just have a lot of mom guilt, which I think if you are a mom, we all have it. Like, you don't escape motherhood without having guilt. And so you just have to, I guess, come to terms with that. But fast forward to the spring, I got off Wellbutrin. I started a different medication, which is going great, but I still have not been feeling myself, like very sluggish. And I often attribute it to just being burnt out because I love to work, but I would just have these periods where I would be really high and get like a lot of stuff done. And then I would kind of, hit burnout and hit it really hard. And those periods of burnout started lasting longer and longer. And I was just like, what is really happening? Am I starting perimenopause? So finally, instead of going to a general practitioner, I went to a functional medicine doctor and I explained my symptoms. And, they asked me if I had any tests done recently. And I said, yeah, they all looked great. My cholesterol was high, but that's probably stress, probably some of my diet. I'm not sure. And they said, well, let's do like a full panel. And so we did that. And I, for the first time in years, have answers to why I am not great at handling stress, why I cannot lose weight, and just not feeling optimized. I don't know what other word to use. I have been on a GLP-1 for over a year now without any weight loss. I work out with the trainer 3 days a week. I've been doing that consistently, no weight loss. And I watch people around me snack and eat meals that I would never eat, and they don't struggle with their weight like I do. So I had this appointment with this functional medicine doctor, and she called me one day to give me the results. And she's like, hey, I want to talk to you about some things that I'm noticing. And I think she mentioned my cholesterol. And I said, yeah, I don't know if it's diet or stress. She was like, well, we'll get to the stress part. And once we got there, she basically told me that I have been under so much stress for so long that I am not producing cortisol, very, very little cortisol. And that has a huge impact on everything I just talked about: weight, sleep, stress, being able to handle stress. And basically what I have been going through is I have adrenal fatigue. And we came up with a game plan to continue my GLP-1 to help with my blood sugar and weight loss, to start taking hormones, testosterone and progesterone, and then also taking a adrenal support medication. And within 4 weeks, I've already dropped 6 pounds. And I wouldn't say that I have more energy, but I definitely feel way more calm. Nothing feels like an emergency or that I can't manage the stress load. It's been truly life-changing. And I guess I'm bringing this up for a couple of reasons. One, because if any of what I just talked about resonates with you, I cannot recommend going to see a functional medicine doctor enough. It is, when I tell you life-changing, it has been life-changing. The second is, I think that especially as business owners, we want success so bad, but at what price? Like, I definitely worked myself to where I am now, unfortunately. And that's not to say that everyone's body will react the way that mine has, but that is totally a possibility. And so I always preach finding balance. I wouldn't say preach, but I always talk about finding balance and making sure you're doing stuff for yourself. And I have all these, great ideas of what I can do for myself, but I never prioritize them. I have always really prioritized work because it's how I validate my self-worth, which is like another podcast episode. But I just think it's so important in hindsight, as someone going through what I've been going through, that we really do stop praising hustle culture and we start embracing what we preach to our clients, which is taking care of yourself. And there's still a way to hustle responsibly. And I have lots of blogs and a couple podcast episodes about this, but it's about taking inventory of what needs to be done to get to where you want to be and prioritizing things a little bit differently. And that means knowing what is actually important to running your business, what numbers you should be focusing on, not getting distracted with all the little things, learning to delegate. I've really been trying to do that the last 6 months, is learning to delegate, letting go of control, learning how to lead in a way that feels comfortable to me, but also just feels right. Delegating and passing things off can often, at least for me, I feel guilty doing that. Why would I give someone else that responsibility? But the truth is that you can't have your hand in everything and something has to give. And so at some point, you have to be able to do the things that actually make you money and find a good team that is there to do the rest and do it well. And it can take a little bit of time to build a team that you trust or, feel like you get that momentum going, but that can happen and it will happen. You just have to not give up and be very aware of those that you bring into the business, vet them well, be slow to hire, quick to fire. One of the other things that I recently did to help with my stress levels, well, a couple of things. I really try hard not to let things get me worked up. So if I can feel myself getting amped up, I just tell myself, in a year, this isn't going to matter. If you have a little bit of a disagreement, or if you're kind of sensitive like I am and things, eats away at you, I just try to remind myself, stop. Your health is more important. This doesn't really matter. This isn't your husband. This isn't your son. It's going to be okay. In a year, it won't matter. And you just need to focus on something else. I've started to train my brain to just turn that off. The other thing is, this past June and July, I went to Korea and Japan for 3 weeks, and it was so wonderful to be able to fully disconnect. Yes, I checked my emails in the morning, but there was really nothing because now I have a team. And so that allowed me to be able to travel, spend time with my family. There was a little work involved in like meeting with manufacturers, but honestly, that was more fun and I didn't feel an obligation or anything like that. And so being able to fully disconnect was what I needed. I was able to absorb the culture and feel and be inspired. And when I came home, people said to me that they noticed a change in my energy. Like I was much more present in meetings. I am much more engaged. I'm like, okay, let's get this done. I'm not feeling so overwhelmed and like just shutting down, because that's what would happen before, is I would just shut down. And it was exactly what I needed. And in fact, I've kind of decided that like once a year, I need to have 3 weeks to be able to just disconnect. And I know that sounds very privileged, and maybe you're the type of person that you just need like a couple of vacations a year, or maybe not even vacations, but you have a hobby. For me, I love travel. That is my hobby. I love different cultures. I love different food. I like to explore. And so I've made this decision that I think once a year, rather than these short little trips, I need to be able to have like 3 weeks where I fully disconnect from life, essentially. And so next year, I think that will probably be in July or August, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you guys have any recommendations, let me know. But I just wanted to share a little bit about my story and my struggles that I've been having and share that insight. So just to recap, I think that if you are feeling anxious or depressed, again, I'm not against medication. I'm definitely like, do whatever you need to do. But I would definitely recommend seeing a psychiatrist over just your general practitioner. Also, if something doesn't feel right, you have to be your own advocate. There were so many times that I went to my GP and I was like, something's not right. And they were like, all the tests are fine. They were testing hormones, but they weren't testing cortisol, and they weren't testing other things that impact hormone levels. And so it really took me just like saying, no, something's not right, and investigating that led me to finding out all this other information about what was going on with my health. The second is really trying to resist falling into the trap of social media glamorizing hustle culture, because it's not glamorous, it's not good for us, and there's ways to work smarter, not harder. And I feel so strongly about that now. I can't even tell you like how important I feel taking time for ourselves is. And especially as moms, a lot of us, we don't get any time to ourselves. So finding those little moments, finding those things that make life easier. And the third is delegating. I remember when I started my business and I thought, well, I don't have money to delegate, or I don't know if I want to delegate. And it's hard at first, but then it gets easier the more you delegate. And I'm trying to like give you some solid advice about that, because I do remember like I don't have the money to do that. I think I kind of made a list of like, what could this person do that would help make more money than I am paying them to do the work, if that makes sense. So a lot of it was like marketing, social media, and doing laundry while I could be in the treatment room making money. There are some trade-offs. You just have to kind of be smart about it. But that is not only important to growing your business, but also keeping some sense of sanity in all of it. Anyway, I am so happy to be back, and we have a lot of great episodes coming up with some of our educators. I'm doing a trip recap, so definitely keep a lookout for those episodes. And thank you so much for listening. As always, if this episode resonated with you at all, I would be so grateful if you liked, shared, and don't forget to follow. See you later.